think the stream is going. Hi everyone, if there's anyone up with me. I was, oh no. Almost spilled my paint. This cord's in the way. Oh, hold on a second. I just realized. I can't talk to you very well if I have the microphone on the other side of the desk, can I? I've got to remount that microphone on its proper stand. You guys are going to have to forgive me for painting straight from the pot here, but just going to today. Just going to. Brush is a little stiff there. So I've decided to start on my largest building. This is a little off, isn't it? Right here. So, quite a few to go. I decided to start off with this one because it was the easiest one to fix all the little teeny tiny little spots that got missed, even though I went over it 3 times with a base coat. Oh my gosh. Just really got to use the really just got to break down and thin the paints out enough for the airbrush and use that. That's what I've got to do. To be honest, it's probably the easiest and cheapest, as far as my time goes, solution to get these things properly done. Another coat over everything with the airbrush, and it would probably be just fine because it'd get in all those little nooks and crannies that it's really hard to do with a brush. It's like little spaces like in between the skulls here, right in there, and up in areas like this, or this little area deep down in there, those crevices. Oddly enough, these areas right here where the spots, the brush doesn't like to hit those, like these broken pieces, these edges. It's really hard harder than you would think to get those all filled in with paint. It's really frustrating. But anyway, I'm just up tonight right now. I'm up this time most nights. It's my standard cool down period from the day of crazy kids and nuttiness. Managed to get the living room clean today. And I know that sounds like, okay, the living room, but man, it was a chore. The little boys helped, and then I kind of got a little upset with the big boys because they're in their rooms playing on their phone. I was not happy about that, so I told them to clean their room up. I haven't looked at it yet because I told them to clean their room up, or I would clean it up, and I am notoriously not a good cleaner-upper of other people's stuff. And I don't mean that I don't do a good job cleaning it. I mean, I kind of clean with a philosophy. If I haven't used it in a few months, I go with one of the 3 methods for it. Sell it, give it away, or throw it away. And so, when it comes to other people's stuff, not too many times that I've actually used any of their stuff, say in the past 6 months or so. I tend to get a little bit nervous about me getting around their stuff in a cleansing mode. I understand that. That's understandable. But you got to keep your room from looking like the homeless camps of the New York City subway stations. Just a simple thing, right? Alright, so I did some rivets here. Got this. I'm doing Rune Lord brass right now. I like the color, so if I have to buy another pot to finish some of these buildings and stuff, that's not going to be that's not going to be a burden on me. I'm going to be drinking some tea here. Drew made this. It's a little weak. And really sweet. The kids, they like a little bit of sugar with their tea. strangely enough, I think in my olding age, that doesn't sit well. The older I get, the less I like extremes of stuff, like things that are too sweet or too salty or too this, that, or the other. It's an odd thing, I guess. I don't know if everybody experiences that or what. Your body just gets tired of that, maybe? I don't know. Maybe. All I can say for sure is mine definitely, apparently has. Things I used to really, really like, I can't. Like, say, a bag of Haribo gummy bears. I love those. Grew up with those in Germany. I just sucked down a bag of those in like 4 seconds flat. Now, as long as the children don't see me eating it, because they'll steal them, I make a bag of those last 3-4 days. Because I just can only eat so many before I'm like, it's too sweet. Too much sweet. Crazy. Can't do spicy stuff much anymore either. That's a throat thing issue. That stuff, oh, that hurts. I'll wake up like after just a few hours of sleep and like throw up in the bathroom because it's just really messed me up internally. So I stay away from the spicy stuff because, well, it's not worth it. Don't get to keep much of it down anyway, so no point in messing with that stuff. Oh, this could take forever if I'm going to paint every rivet and bolt. I see it in my mind. I say, oh no, this got giant 5-story buildings with all these all over them. Telling myself out loud, right here. I'm still doing it, aren't I? Still going to end up doing it. So many little details. These little things I'm worrying about. What am I going to do here? Details, the skull. This right here. So I should do something with this. That ribbed area. Not sure. Make it into a down here too. Maybe some kind of spikes in it though. I was thinking maybe make it into some kind of power conduit, and so like paint them different colors. But maybe that won't work out because there's just like buttresses on the outside of the buildings. It would work on a Mechanicum building. I think these are administratum parts here though, so probably gonna stay away from that then. I have to figure out a plan. See, this is why things take me so crazy ways, because I don't really ever come up with much of a plan. Pick a direction and I go for it in almost everything. Just pick a direction and I start going that way. Figuring it out as I go. Got so many bolts. Why am I going to paint all these? I mean, the skulls are one thing. There's like, I don't know, I counted on one building, there was like 200 on one building. That's not appropriate. It's too many to paint, but I gotta paint all, don't I? Because I started to paint all the skulls, all the bolts and rivets. These areas here. Got to paint them. Make them look good. It'll be good when it's all done though. It'll be really nice. Get a table together, get all this laid out. It'll be epic. So, kind of worrying about the live stream a little bit, what I should do, when I should do it. But it's interesting addition if I can get it right. Kind of fun to like just do stuff and not worry too much about what's going on. Just have to learn to glance over to my right on the screen every once in a while, or more than once in a while, like often-ish. I don't know if YouTube, probably Twitch has like things where maybe it has some kind of alert system for the chat. I'm going to look into that. I don't think YouTube does. But if it does, it'd be nice to be able to utilize that in some manner. So I knew when someone was chatting on the chat. It's a lot easier than like having get like lasered in on this and then oh someone said something 3 minutes ago. Because I guess part of the lure of the live stream, it's like a conversation, like a get together. And get together and we can interact and we can all just hang out, like a hangout. Yeah, like a hanging out. Just noticed these were skulls under here when I was painting this other one here. I just always look at it and there's like some heavy shadow, and then I tilted it up and said, oh look, those are skulls. Which is more skulls to paint. And plus, now that I just thought about it, that building that I counted 200 skulls on probably has more because there's some of these panels in there. I don't know. There's a lot of skulls. So many. It's weird. The Khorne Chaos God is the Lord of Skulls, but dang if the Empire don't have skulls all over the place, don't they? Skulls, skulls, more skulls. Then I guess it's kind of like the thing, you know. The billions and billions that die. Yeah, so many are honored by having their skulls and probably various other body parts on some of these models interred into the structures of the Imperium, only then to be kind of blown apart again. It's kind of sad actually when you think about it that way. Memorialized, then nuked. Wondering about this new Fall Acadia, where they're going to take it. It seems interesting. I'm interested in two of the new models. The Admech guy, the Gigantor dude, probably be a monstrous creature or something. And the Inquisitor. I just put gold. I just hit the cord. Move the camera when I did it too. Hit the cord for the camera. Gotta figure out a way to reroute this cord behind the microphone. Might be better. Alright, just making sure I didn't miss any of these. This is going to be the issue. Get them all, get a whole building done, and then look over and there'll be like one bolt somewhere that isn't done. Oh, there's some inside too. Probably should go over those too. Really should just decide how much of this is going to be this color. What I'm going to do is some of the other areas. I know the skulls. I'm going to paint the skulls. Some tiny ones here. I'm going to hit those. There's one on here if I can hit it. Got it. I'm not sure about these louvered areas. Louvered. I guess you could consider that kind of a bolt there. I just looked down, just looking at this bolt here, and I just looked down this. I'm like, oh no! Get up. Which is going to be worse? Which is going to be more numerous? You think the bolts, the rivets, whatever, or the skulls? This is the question. It's okay though. We'll get them all eventually. Don't want to get too out of hand with this. Can't be perfect, you know. Just can't. After a certain amount of time, my hand will start shaking, and then I'll have to do things to kind of prop it up, and then after a little bit of time after that, then I won't be able to. And I'll just have to stop and take a break. And so it'll just take time, and it'll take effort to get it done as well as I can get it done, and that'll be that. So hopefully you guys are all starting some good projects this year, getting into some getting into some maybe some new models. I'm going to clean this brush off a little bit. It's paint is getting, the metallic paints tend to dry quickly because they actually usually have little shiny bits on them, usually aluminum dust or something similar, so they tend to get up in the bristles and dry up and tend to make the paintbrush not cool. So I try to clean it out now and again when I'm doing them. Let's get this tip back to where it needs to be. It's kind of feathering out on it. Yeah, I got something on there. Get this going. Okay, there we go. Or there we don't go. Just doesn't want to come back together for me. Need stray bristles peeking out all over. That's not good. This ends up to stray paint marks. Got to be fixed. Ow, like that. It's okay. Not gonna be perfect. Just gonna be pretty darn good, and we'll have to live with it pretty darn good. At least pretty darn good for us, right? We all have our own level of pretty darn good. Like when we see some stuff on Facebook and we're like, what? How did they do that? Why do they have such amazing skill? You know, some people, they have a little talent, sure. But I think others, it's kind of a mix of that, though. Talent and practice. And some people have the opportunity to paint literally thousands of models in the time that many of us maybe only get a few dozen that we get a chance to paint. And so their experiences are a little bit vaster than ours. But yeah, some people do have like a little bit of advantage on the rest of us just based on their God-given talents. And it doesn't mean us nubs can't give them a run for their money. Just harder, that's all. It just takes more concentration and work. We all can do, I think we all can do like way above what we normally do. A lot of times it's just we don't have the time or finances to put into tools or resources to do it. That doesn't mean what we do accomplish with what we have isn't bad, right? Like me, I see sometimes some people have so much paint, but a lot of times the color schemes and all that I paint a lot of my models is just based on, I try to get something that looks good and interesting, but a lot of it comes down to sometimes like what colors do I have that I have a good amount of paint for, how much paint I got left before that I can use before payday comes rolling around again, right? And maybe I can buy another pot or two, and then it comes down, and you use some of your colors that you like to use more than others. Ends up you don't get a new pot that time at the store, where you get one less new pot because you gotta replace an old pot or two. That's a run out. Like me for mostly it's metallics. And I run out of black because the base is black, so all of the different black paints that I use for like black, run out of that all the time. So a lot of times it's like if I can only get one pot, then it's just replacing my black or a black that I'm out of. And then other times it's like, here's the thing. Oh, here's a decision. Oh. 1, 2, 3, so 4. There's 12. 28. Plus these. 4, 8. There's like 40 different bolts and rivets on these panels. I'm looking over here. Yeah, most of them. If I start painting those, that's 40 per. Oh. Let me take a drink of tea while I make a decision on that. Oh my gosh. Oh, no. Some of the did I use? I wish I could. Maybe I know in some of the newer buildings I use those, so there's not really abundance of. Some I use those on older buildings. Oh. Not cool. Something. Just can't stop myself, can I? Oh, this is not gonna be good. So many have got to be. Set this down because my hand's starting to want to shake a little bit, but I think part of it is because it knows what I'm walking into here. This is, oh, why am I doing this? Somebody stop me. I wish you guys were up with me right now. Maybe someone could teleport through the Ethernet there and tell me I'm gone insane. Here's the thing, should I just paint the little bolt that goes through and leave the nut kind of like that? We'll do that first and see how that looks. I mean, if it looks better to paint the whole thing, we will. Oh my. So I'm watching this new YouTube channel. Pretty sure I'm subscribed to it. The Real Martian. It's a pretty interesting project he's doing. You guys should take a look. You can find it in my subscriptions. Interesting channel. He's building a kind of self-sustaining I don't know the word, complex out on his homestead. The biggest thing is it's for like using here on Earth to for environments where people live, where it's kind of hard to make a living, and creating an environment that's kind of self-sustaining, where people could self-sustain themselves through the use of technologies and stuff that currently are available. Kind of his goal, I believe, from what I can gather. And but he's playing it up because it is some technology that could be used if we were to go to Mars and try to survive on Mars. And so yeah, he's a bit of a sci-fi guy. And so he's got it set up as the real Martian there. Very interesting little channel. He's got a bunch of subscribers already because he got a really nice shout out from Wrangler Star, another channel that I watch. And boosted him up pretty good. He's got a really good start. And if it's something that you think you might be interested in, you should go and give him a look-see, maybe give him a sub, and check it out. Wow, these are so many of these. Oh, stop shaking, don't shake. Don't shake. And shaking. So much shaking. Oh, why are there rivets there? There's rivets right here. That's odd. Place for rivets. Very odd. Guess I have to hit that one too. Flip it over and see if there's any of those kind of rivets on the other side. And bolts and nuts and rivets. Oh, so many of these. I thought the skulls were going to do me in. Ooh, shot of bone. That's another color that I'm constantly replacing. But I use it for skulls. I use it for purity seals and highlights on flesh tone sometimes. And, so many things. I use a lot of that color. Whew, that's kind of cool. All those little things blinged up. Got Rune Lord brass pimples everywhere. All that I got sucked into the intricacies of tiny little dots and forgot to do this. Well, I see it as a exhaust vent, but I'm not sure because where it's placed and everything, what it's supposed to really be. But we'll say an exhaust vent. It looks like internal combustion engine exhaust. Looks like some of the exhausts on the back of the dreadnoughts and stuff, so I don't know. Do not know what the dealy bob is there. We will just paint it and later shade it, and then it'll be that, right? We will be done. Okay, got that. One more look-see. I want to do the cross braces on these lights with this, but and I'll know for next time, the next piece that I do. Need to really get the Dawn Star or Dawnstone in there and then do that. So I'm going to have to clean the brush. I'm going to leave that open, I guess. Clean the brush, get the Dawnstone in there a little bit. I think this brush will be fine. If not, I can get the insane detail brush out. Using these cheap brushes, just terrain, but see how that works out for me. Oh, okay, get the Dawnstone in there. And just that one light. Well, there's one inside too. So 1, 2, 3. Oh, we may need the too much paint so it overflows. May just need the smaller brush for this one. As long as I can keep it, I mean, if it flows onto some of the cross braces, that's not too bad. So if it starts to get further out of hand than that, which it might, because it's got this one little batch of hairs that wants to go its own direction here for some reason. Just the problem with these cheaper brushes. but sometimes you got to do the cheaper brushes because you can get a whole lot of them and just go through them right when they start giving you problems. So just move to the next one. Maybe won't be able to see, but there we go. I need to get me cross light so I don't have so many shadows on stuff. That worked out. I'll be able to cover up the gray that went on the crossbars with the brass, and then that will be that. So I have to get this outside one a little bigger, but hard to reach. I'm gonna do this middle piece first. And just notice got a lot of paint on there. This is, there we go. Got it on the crossbar, but that'll dry up and then we can cover it up. And like I said, the reason I'm doing the Dawn Stone in there is because I want these to be non-working. And that sort of gives it a kind of light effect. It's like a glass effect where there's light in, but it's kind of frosted or hazed over, so you really can't see inside. It does to me, at least. I use that for that. Yep, there we go. Yeah, it just does that. And we'll clean this bad boy up. I'm going to close this before I knock it over. Been very knocky over today with paints, and I don't want to do that. I think I'm going to give this a spritz with the Windex here. I think my problem is there's some paint that's just stuck down in there. The problem with that is it stinks. Clean this up. Got a new one of these, but not going to use it yet. Not till this one is good and done dead. So I put it up for now. Wife went to Atlanta and picked one up while they were up there picking up some other stuff. Be careful, be careful. Don't get too wild with your paint. Just the cross pieces. There you go. I guess, let's see if we can do that. The outer ring's out here like that. Not making too much of a mess. This big one, it's easy. I feel I'm going to regret trying to do that on a small one though, but never know till we try, right? There we go. Almost. Put my hand on the spinny disc, it spins. It's not the best thing to be bracing on sometimes. Or at all times. But it's what I do. It's how I do. It's how I do. Try to do this inside one. Okay, just lightly get the little cage pieces there. Yeah, it's hard to get the cage pieces without touching that upper ring here. So I think that it's just going to have to be a foregone conclusion to kind of hit that too. Although it's going to be hard in some of these angles too. This is already hard. Having to stretch my brush out beyond the point that I normally have gripped on it. Oh, one more to go. And we'll have a look at that. Let's see what that puts us at. Oh, sometimes I'm holding my breath. I'm just like, okay, paint quickly before you run out of oxygen. No, Oh, I'm not even touching anything. My hand's starting to shake though. Get braced on this. This is going to be hard, this inside edge on some of these. Because it's going to be tied up against stuff. It's going to be not fun. I have to get a brush like this and cut it down like that size so I don't have all this hanging out. So it'll fit in some places. That looks good so far. Ow, that's pointy. What should I do next? Probably should decide what to do. I'm going to clean this like this again really quick. Just clean it out. See all those little sparkly bits? I don't know if you guys can see this. This thing is wider than I can see on the screen. Yeah, there's all those sparkly bits in there. Cleans it up nice though. Chemically. Alright, we got a bunch of skulls that we could hit. I think I'm going to go with what we got. It's called Leadbelcher. Do I have another Leadbelcher that's not? Because I know one of these is like partner empty. Oh, look at this one. They're both partner empty. Somehow I've got them both open. Do I need to put one? When I buy ones that are supposed to be replacements? Because I'm thinking ahead, which is not often, but because I am, when I am, I need to take those and set them somewhere separate so I don't end up opening them and then going back and forth between the two, and then I end up with two nearly empty pots and thinking to myself, oh, I've got two of those, so that should be enough, and then run out. Because the Leadbelcher is another that I like to use because it's not a bright silver. It's nice, kind of toned down, kind of metallic. I like the toned down metallics. So I prefer the Runelord brass to a gold, like the Leadbelcher instead of the silvers. Like I can see, and I do have uses for like the Stormhold silver, even though I bought it exclusively to try that effect that Duncan was doing. I just wanted to see, hey, I found one, and one that I could use on some of my stuff, and I just wanted to see if it worked. If it was something I could do. But there's other uses for it as well. But I prefer these more toned down ones. For sure. Guess these little forward pieces need some of that treatment. Let's do this way. Okay, yeah, we will attempt to just do the internals. I think we're gonna have to flip this. Or we'll see what I have to do if it works out. Gonna hold my hand steady. See how that goes. That wasn't too bad. Got it. Looks better. I like that. It does look better. That looks way better than if I had just left it. So I'm kind of happy with that. And I know I'll be happy with all of these once they're done. Just gonna be getting to the done part. Literally from the time I got these till when they're finished, it might be. I mean, right now it's a good 4 or 5 months, maybe more. I have to check when I did the videos when I first got these a while ago. I'd probably be surprised and over and embarrassed how long it's been. But hopefully I can get them done in under a year. So excited to get them, and because I wanted to have them and have my own stuff to put together for the table, and But so much stuff came. When I first got them, I was like building stuff, and kind of built like sort of the buildings that were inside of it. Except the administratum. I went crazy with that first administratum. Because I just wanted to have a nice, huge, gigantic building. And I guess you could go even crazier if you did. You just went for it, because you could make some pretty big buildings. Oh, some of these are going to be hard to go after too. I'm just going to have to do the best I can when it comes to these. Because some of these buildings get into these little word panels is going to be easier said than done. Another reason why I'm doing this piece actually too is when I thought about it, I was like, it's small and it has a lot of the elements that a lot of other buildings have and worked into it. And I figured that it would be a really good piece to be able to keep close by once I get it done as a reference. So when I'm doing another building, I can look at it and go, okay, what did I do with the these louvered panels? Louvered. What did I do with the bolts? What did I do with the skulls? Did I paint this thing here, or did I leave it and just kind of dry brush it with a Dawnstone to make it look concrete-ish or rockish? So that's one of the reasons, actually. Besides it being the smallest piece and the one that I was able to get base coated most properly. Those are considerations. Of course, I'm not gonna lie, those were. But you do what you can, right? So I think that's it for that. Clean this off. I'll use the water this time and get some of that chemical out. And all right. Kind of avoiding it in my head. But there's no avoiding it, is it? We shall body bone. It's got to be done. Got to be done. I need this. I've been closing these up in my paint pots. I've been putting these from the brushes in there to hold these up. Anybody who's worked with these knows this pain in the butt. But I've been closing my paint pots and squishing those, and then trying to find them, and it's in the last second. What was the last paint I just used? You know? And sometimes for me that is a struggle. Like, even if it's just been a few seconds, I've set it down and it's like, dang it, what was the last paint I was just using? So you can go dig through and look and figure out where it is, because it's kind of hard to see. It's clear. So when you get the paint pot sitting with all the other paint pots in a big pile, it's like it can be something that escapes your gaze there as you're looking for it. So yeah, I'm trying not to do that now. I'm trying to develop a habit of pulling that out. Oop! After I use it. But it's hard since I'm not, like, I'm using it to prop up the paint pot, but I'm not putting it back on the brush. So it's not like a critical thing until I get to the next paint color. And a lot of times for me, I'm not going like, oh, this is the next paint color, I'm going straight for it. A lot of times for me, it's more like, and I'm staring at everything and kind of like, what's the next paint I should use? And so that process, and then I finally decide on something. I decide what I'm going to paint next, and then decide what color would be the best part of that, and so on and so forth. And then by that time, I'm kind of like, oh man, I need that thing, because this won't stay open. And then I have to try to remember what the last color I used was. Because it's not like I'm following some recipe or anything. I'm just wing-a-dinging it. And it's crazy. Crazy. I'm going to finish this up though and then try to go to bed. It'll be probably be a couple hours of just hanging there for a while. Big thing is I always have to get up at 5, so when I stay up late, which I do a lot, it doesn't do me any good, because at 5 I must get up and wake up my children for school. Then I lay down for a little bit, and then have to get up again for good. But yeah, that's pretty much everyday thing. If they get to go to school, oh my gosh. Big storms came through here yesterday. Tornado. It was pretty crazy. We were all huddled in this room. This is my hobby room that I've showed you guys. And you may have noticed there's no windows. It is in the center of the house, and it is the safest place to hide from the tornadoes. We had a tornado just pass less than a quarter of a mile from us. 3-minute drive. Well, that's there was a home that was hit. A tree was knocked down by the tornado 3 minutes from us, just down the road, literally. And 4 people were killed there. It was crazy. But yeah, we were all huddled in here. I went out a couple of times to check on the weather and everything out the door. Well, the wife and kids stayed here, because that's what you're supposed to do as the dad. Is after the warning's supposed to be over, you're supposed to go out and make sure that it actually is safe. But we got through it pretty good here. A large part of that probably is because, I don't know if I've told you this before, but when I first moved in, there was tons of pine trees around this house. The builder had left because there was a little pine forest where there's like 4 or 5 houses here in a row that they built in this area. They bought this land and built them. Pretty decent yards and everything, size yards and all that, but 4 or 5 here in a row. It was a little little pine forest, a little spit of land. And he left a bunch of those trees on the properties. And don't know why, but he did. And all the other neighbors kept theirs. We were like the last people to move in. First thing I didn't have a chainsaw, but I had a demo saw. And most of the trees they left were not that big. They were kind of big, but not that big. And a sawzall is what some people might call the demo saw, but I call them demo saws. So that's what they're mostly used for, or that I use them for. But that's what I had. And so I went out there with the sawzall and I cut them all down. I did. I cut them all down. And slowly we burned up what was left of them. And eventually had enough money, had some people come and take up the stumps that were left for most of them. That was good. It took a while to save up that money, but they came. They got all the stumps, so they're all gone. And people thought I was crazy, but they were all pine trees. And pine trees do not put down deep roots. And even though having grown up in another country, I was still born in this state and did some growing up in this state and at different ages, as we would be in Germany and come back here for a little while and then be back in Germany. But I understood that what happens around here, at least this local area, is it'll have normal rains and we'll have the normal storms and stuff, but every once in a while we'll get a kind of a, I don't say perfect storm, but because it happens relatively frequently for that kind of stuff. It's not like this never happens kind of thing. Then all of a sudden it does. It's more common than that, but not super common. But what will happen is it'll rain a couple days in a row, a few days in a row. It'll be just a regular kind of, not a storm rain, but and not really heavy, but it'll be a decent rain, a good soaking rain. And it'll do that, and then if you pay attention, you'll notice the water flowing in the ditches on the side of the road, or the fields might be flooded in certain areas. And if you pay attention to that kind of things, then you know that it's a dangerous time. Because if we do get a storm, crazy storm, two things will happen. One is there'll be a lot of flooding, a lot of flash flooding and stuff like that, because the ground just can't take any more water. And so it overflows the drainage systems, which are already taxed, and then starts flooding areas that you normally don't see it. And then the other thing that happens is that all these pine trees that people seem to love around here, because it's shade, and trust me, pine trees are not that much shade. They're not worth it. But anyway, pine trees and some different trees, but mostly the pine trees will get blown over in the wind because they don't put deep roots down here. And so there'll be a lot of knocked over trees because of that. And so when we first moved in here, seeing that there were all these pine trees and many of them were close to the house, I chopped them all down. And, there's been times where we've been working out in the yard and my wife would be like, it's kind of hot because we have no shade. And I'm right there with her. And then it's times like these where I am so glad that I chopped them all down. Because we didn't really, there's a couple of the one neighbor's trees that are close on one side. And they said the one we could take down, but we'll have to save some money to take that down. They said if we want to take it down, we could take it down. And they probably think I'm crazy too. But we probably will when we get a chance. But other than that, there are no trees that are tall enough that if they just get knocked over, they're going to hit our home. Now, there's trees that if they got picked up and flown around in a crazy, that just, once in a blue moon happen, then we might have issues. But for the most part, we've got to just worry about getting directly hit by the tornado to be too in trouble. Which, is good. That just means that if the tornado's coming and it's meant for you, then it's meant for you. Not much you can do in that situation, right? But other than that, we got pretty lucky. The kids were out of school. Some damage at the school. A big oak tree that's been down there forever got ripped up in the parking lot. They said the bleachers were thrown. Gosh, I want to say where those bleachers are to the church that they supposedly were hit. Wow, that's got to be easily the length of 6-7 football fields, maybe more. Pretty far. So yeah, that was a thing. But I think they're good to go to school tomorrow, so damage must not not been super, super bad as far as the building was concerned. At least the school building. I think maybe the church might have some issues over there. Got bleachers hit the building. But other than that, I think we came off okay. Robert over in Georgia, man, big old tree came down in his yard. It put a little, like, he said, like a palm-sized, fist-sized dent in the side of the truck. But, whew, man, that tree could have just obliterated the truck and maybe part of the house. But it just, God willing, just kind of landed in the perfect way that was not the case, which is great stuff. But yeah, apparently they had a lot of damage over there in Georgia where they live, in their town. Power lines down and trees down and all that. And we've been over there, me and Dan, and they got a lot of trees in that area actually that they have. And that may sound like a tree hater instead of a tree hugger, but I'm not really. But you gotta have the right tree in the right place. You can't be sticking a tree somewhere because you think it's cool, because trees are like kids. They are awesome when they're little and tiny and all that, but then they grow up and they cause problems. Always the problems. And you just can't stick a certain tree in a certain area because, you know, it might grow super big and the roots tear up your foundation and get into your water pipes and just tear up your sewer lines or your septic tank or whatever. Or it's a big pine and it's super close to your house and it might get blown over and just slice your dang home in two. Just trees, you gotta stay away from trees. Get the right tree in the right place. Me, I'm not averse to maybe getting a few Japanese maples in the front and backyard and putting those, because those don't get super huge, and I can put them in the right spot so even if they grow, they're not going to affect the house or us. That looks good already, just like that. Just the pattern of the skulls, it makes me, I feel like, hey, that's pretty cool. That's looking close to done. I'm gonna spray here. Clean. Well, I think. What should I do? We got that. Don't want to go too far, but don't want to abandon it. Gonna do some. Definitely gonna do Agrix Earthshade over the parts that I painted. It's gonna give me the right shade tone. You know, I'm wondering if I should do the lead belcher on those spikes. You know what, there are some other metal parts that are sticking out as well. I'll throw that in the water. This little puddle of Windex got kind of oversaturated. I knew the paint was drying on there as I was doing it, but I was just wanting to get it done. You know what, that's what I'm going to look at right here. I'm going to do the pipe parts that I see now that I'm looking at it overall closer. Like there's some here, like pipe rebar parts. Yeah, that's what, rebar type pieces. Gonna hit those up. Knock those down. We'll knock those down with some Agrix Earthshade as well. Yeah, they'll give them a rusted kind of feel. That'll be fine. Get that one. Get it all done. Now these spikes. Got paint on this. Clean that off. Paint everywhere. Put that in here. Need a smaller one. Should I? Shouldn't I? Should I? Shouldn't I? Let's. Guess we can go back over it with concrete if we need to. It's the name of the paint that I painted. This and some other buildings, but this particular one that we'll work on now. Concrete. Very dark for concrete though. But maybe whoever did it had dark concrete where they break things where they lived, or maybe all they ever saw was like asphalt and they figured that was concrete. Yeah, lived in a city. Everyone always said asphalt jungle or concrete jungle, and they figured, well, that must be concrete because everybody says concrete jungle. I don't know. Could be. Could be. Alright, that's actually good. Alright, now looking at it overall, I'm kind of happy with where it's at. It's some detail work into it, and once it's shaded down, it'll look nice. It's not, I mean, it's going to be in some points a lot of work, no doubt about that. Just when you get to certain buildings, there's going to be work to get certain things done, but it's not going to be overwhelming. Going to be easy to get to a point and be like, okay, yeah, we got it, for sure. And then when I get the little, not the skulls, but where the priests are, I can do them like I did my one building with the kind of the bluing effect, and that'll work. I don't remember which paint it was out of here. I think it was this Twilight Blue right there. So let's do some Agrax on here. It's a dreaded giant bottle. So easy to spill. I need this in here because these shades are like notorious. At least mine are, for just not wanting to snap open the way they're quote unquote supposed to do. Tone down these. Oh, this is the thing, huh? Oh, that's too much. Okay, just ding, 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 ding. Oh my gosh, this could take my life. This could be the rest of my life right here. Just little dabs of shade on tiny little metallic dots. Oh my goodness. Okay. Okay. That was frightening. Just watching myself do that. Like out of body experience. Okay, let's rest that up. Rest it up there when it dries. That's a good thing. Rusting it up. Agrax is good for that. And it's great for this over the, gives it a it gives the, when you put it on the purity seals, it gives it a dirty or old parchment look, which is good. And then when you do it on Skull and Bones, it gives it almost a kind of once was buried but now dug up, kind of like maybe bits of dried skin on the skull look to it. It makes it look old and skull-like. So I like it for sure. Of course, putting it on all of these dots is going to be a bit annoying because I can't put too much. But I can see I'm looking at like tone down and then side by side not tone down. It's hard to just even like try to lie to yourself and be like, well, maybe it doesn't need it. No, it needs it. It does at that. It needs it. Just don't even lie to yourself, because if you do, it would be great. I'm sorry. I don't know how long ago. Dragon of the Depths. I do not have a steady hand. I don't. I don't know. You probably can't see, but I'm at the edge of my table, and my arms are braced on the edge of my table about, I don't know, maybe this far from my wrist, like that. And then I will brace my one hand in this way, and the other hand, and it's all in the bracing, all in the bracing. And my hands do get steadily unsteadier when I go through this, because I'm not exactly sure what it is, but in my wrists here and this one, there's some kind of cysts that interfere. It kind of pinches the nerves that go through there, and I guess at times what it ends up doing, there are two things that it ends up doing, two kind of ways it can go over time, in and out. The first is it ends up pinching it away, and it hurts really bad, like funny bone hitting pain, and that's not cool. And the other one is where it numbs everything, and I say that's not so bad because it's not like I can't feel my hands. Some parts of them I can't feel, but it when it does that, it allows me to push through some of the ouch of it and just keep doing stuff, even though I'm kind of like uncomfortable, or that hurts. I have to dip in there. There's none left on my shelf thing. See, I knew I gotta learn to keep looking over at the chat. I didn't even know someone had said something, but it's a learning process. I hope I didn't miss you though. Don't you can erase paint. You can. If you paint in thin enough layers, you can kind of erase paint. If you I know the video is not the greatest. I wish I could figure out a way to make it the greatest. But if you were able to look up close at these, like on each of these, you would notice before I put the shade on the skulls, that you could actually see part of the gray peering through, because it's that thin of a layer of paint on there. Even painting straight from the pot. And when I thin it down, it's two. I'll go over 2 coats, and it'll be still that thin where you can see the gray a little bit. But I leave it that way a lot, even when it's the black under there, because when I shade over it a little heavier, those parts become, those recesses parts and stuff, that's too much there, become like, they shade the model, they give it depth when I do that. So that's why I do that. That's why I paint my Crimson Fists, or Crimson Axes, which are actually Imperial Fists subchapter. So I painted them yellow because I eventually was going to make them into Imperial Fists, and probably will one of these days. I paint yellow over black, and the reason I do that is because I can put a few thin coats of yellow, and then in certain areas leave it where you can see that black under there, and then I'll shade them over gently with a Nuln Oil, and it creates this dirty used kind of yellow, which some people do with like different orangey yellows and stuff like that. But I accomplish it by starting out with a shade color that's or a base color that's darker. So that's how I do it. So I use the fact that you'll see some of the base coat through on a lot of things to create shade. That's how I do it. This looks good. I like this. Only thing I'm afraid of is that I have giant versions of this to do. These are gonna take a while. Oh, let's before we have a video evidence of crazy shade accidents. Some of these are gonna be rough because there's gonna be different that needs to be done here. The Aquila will need to be done. This sword will need to be more stone, probably Dawn stone that. These guys, if I'm gonna probably do the same treatment as the little ones, where I use this Twilight Blue on them and kind of make them look like they've been painted, but the paint's fading. And this one I might have to actually do some different with the lights, because this is an intact building with only slight damage, and this one is actual, probably like it's going to be still used and in use. So I'll have to do different things with that. We'll have to do all these little keyboard buttons and everything. So that'll be fun. Let me see. Let me get that other Billy. I'm gonna die. Here, so this is what we did. Sorry. This is what we did when we did the void shield generator. We went and we painted all the wires different colors. Did the lights a little funky. I'll dry breasted all a coppery color. I did use gold on these things here. Kind of messed up this a little bit, but I was on the finish not perfect. I did a bright silver here, but I dirtied it up with the Agrex. Did all these wires and buttons. Did these wires different colors too, so we're really going to have to go on these Mechanicum buildings. We're going to have to keep up with the same level here. That's going to be fun. Oh yeah, I try to stay away from armies, the Horde armies, if I can help it. Definitely stay away from them. Although, I don't know, I need to wash my brush, don't I? I'm about to put that thing away without it being clean. But yeah, I do tend to stay away from the Horde armies if I can help it. I do have some guards, but I've built kind of it's a small armored guard task force kind of army, if you want. Got tanks, got the chimeras, and then I've got veteran squads. So that's how I do. Now I'm doing my. Here's the one test that I did for the assassins. Got her done up. I think I'm not going to do every assassin like this. She's got the pink tights, and then if you look here, if you look right at this area here and then down, that's actually another boot like this is. But the way I painted it is I painted this area up here as if it was armor, and then this is part of her tights, and then I gave her just a little shoe over here. Just a shoe and then a boot on this side. So it makes her look very thrown together, haphazard in what she's carrying, what she has. And I think that's what I'm going to go with all of them. of the Death Cults assassins here. I did bluing on the power weapons swords that she's carrying. The buildings are going to be, I can't say exactly because I haven't been able to count them exactly, but I have say easily 30 right now between different types of buildings, about 30. And what they're for is I'm going to build my own table because I have done battle reports in the past, but I've had to go to the store to do the battle reports. And so that limits the hours that I can do it. It has a lot of background noise that because of the cameras that I take there and the audio editing software that I have access to at this time, makes it hard for me to edit the audio and make it better. And the lighting is what it is. I can't affect that. So here at home, I will be able to swap out the lighting with the good lights like this, so that instead of this, I can have brightness and people can see. I'll be able to theoretically, let's just go with that word, control the sound, but with 4 boys still at home out of 6. Best I can, I'll do. Do the best I can. Be able to do it on my own time schedule without having to worry about the store. And so I'll be able to do that for battle reports. I'll still go to the store to play games and stuff because going out with getting out of the house, away from kids, community, all that's a great thing to do. But I'll be able to say, hey, come on over. Let's, over the next month, let's go ahead and do this scenario. Let's create a storyline for this. So that'll be great. Yeah, I know. I got 6 kids. 2 of them are out. One of them is, the second oldest is in the Marine Corps. And the oldest is classic millennial. He didn't move out too far. He moved to grandma's house, which is the next town over, and still trying to figure out his life, I guess. So that's his thing. I hope he does well. I always pray that he gets a handle on things and does better for himself than he currently is doing. But sometimes some of us, it just takes extra time for us, I guess. The next oldest is about to drive. I've been having the pleasure of being a passenger for the last 6 months, so that'll be great. When he finally gets his license, I won't have to cart him around. And the others are great. Okay. LT, he sometimes, you see him, he'll bust into a video or something. If you look through the videos, LT will bust in. He's a really super smart boy. He's talking about skipping 2 grades right now with him. And I think we're leaning towards letting him do it because we'd rather him be challenged than be bored. Because being bored in school, I know about that, and it's not a good thing. And then the youngest is a problem. The youngest will be the problem, soundproofing. He's stubborn. He's like his brother, but he's got a stubborn streak. Super smart, but stubborn. He's inherited my ability to see something done once and then be able to do it, which is dangerous because you got to watch what you let him see you do. See, he sees you how to get into the dishwasher, and next thing you know, he's in the dishwasher. Now, the best side about that, though, is he is the only child out of the 6 that knows how to properly hold a dustpan, that knows how to unload and load the dishwasher properly, and which cabinets to put all the stuff in. And he's only 3. He'll actually climb onto the cabinet to put stuff in the upper cabinet where it needs to be. So you've got to actually pay attention to the dishwasher when it stops, or else he'll unload it and try to put stuff away. So, but yeah, we got her done. I'm not sure where we're going to go with some of the other ones. This one will be an interesting one to paint when we get to it. But if I don't see, that's what happens. I can hold my hand steady, but the thing is, like, I know this is in my hand right here because I can see it's in my hand, but I can't really feel it. So that's the thing. I think I have something gripped tight enough, and then I don't, and I drop it. So that's what happens after a time. But I start out good, and if I just watch my hand and make sure that my skin is indented by holding it, then I know I'm doing good. But if I don't pay attention, just pick something up, I can be like, whoops, and drop it. But I get over that. So, wow, I've been live streaming for an hour and 20, and I got my uh-oh. I lost it. Where was the building I was working on? Oh, there it is. It's on the keyboard. Oh, good thing I turned the keyboard off, or it'd be making all kinds of noises over there. So yeah, I think this is good enough for the administratum, because there's going to be other pieces on the administratum buildings that'll be able to be a little bit fancier, but I think for these kind of pieces, that's enough detail, and it's going to look okay. And we'll have this. We'll get these done. I'm going to get these done for sure. It's going to take me a while, longer than I suspected. Oh, holding it super tight. Yeah, it probably does, but I'm a veteran, and the only health care that I get is the veterans VA, and so I just have to hold off and wait until they fix that, and it's going to be a while. It just takes anything that would normally take, say maybe this is something that you would get in and get fixed in 6 months. That's going to be 2 years for the VA minimum. This is just the way it is, and you just work the best you can through the system. I mean, I only get to see my doctor twice a year for 15 minutes. But the problem locally is that usually the doctors don't last a year. So what practically ends up happening realistically is I'll see a doctor, say at the beginning of the year. Let's just say January, right? I'll see a doctor, and we'll go over all the things that need to be taken care of. And I make sure I bring a list because I know what's going to happen. They put in as much as they can. They can only, like, say, we can only send you up for this issue and that issue. We can't deal with the other 6. So, like, okay, well, let's do that. Then when it comes up time for my next appointment, say 6 months from then, that doctor is quit. They're gone. And they have a new doctor coming in, but they're having to redo the schedule, so they say they have to reschedule your thing. So what they do is they reschedule you for an appointment, but what the reschedule is to reschedule you to give you an appointment. So by the time you get that reschedule and then you get the appointment ends up being, say, December of that year. So you end up seeing the doctor about once a year. Is how it ends up being. It's partly because they only let you see the doctor twice a year, and partly because of the turnover that's in the VA system, at least locally. I can only speak locally, but I'm sure that it's probably a problem in other places, because the turnover seems to be just an issue. Is that in reality you only get to see the doctor once a year for about 15 minutes. So you have to make the very, very most of that 15 minutes. And this is the least of my issues right now. Others were my knees and stuff like that. So that's the last thing that I had to take care of. And I'm trying my best to not let them cut into me, because I actually finally got a doctor admit the last time is that once people start cutting into backs or knees or other issues, it's just never 100% the same. It just never gets back to 100%. And that is just the plain truth of it. It's just how it is. So, yeah. So, instead of just babbling on by myself, Yeah, we do need better health care in this country. We do. For certain. But I don't think the current system is the best way to do it, because I think that people who become doctors, they have to go through a lot of stuff, a lot of training, a lot of expense on their part. And if you do like what the Obamacare thing wants to do, is limit how much they can make and what they can charge and all that stuff, they're not going to get the benefit for all that they put into it. And that's not going to help. That's not going to help. They don't want to do it. Why would you do that? What's in it for you? And it's not a selfish thing. I mean, I understand it. I mean, who would want to put in, 10 years of your life, a decade or more, and then not be able to support a family or get a few nice things in life? That's all we all want. It's not a greed thing. It's a life thing. And I understand that perfectly. I wouldn't want to do it, even though I actually did put 10 years of my life into the military. But I did believe, and I still believe that it was a duty. Somebody has to do it. Somebody has to go out there and stand on the front line, even if it's for a little while. And someone in my family has been out there standing on the front line since before the Revolutionary War. So, and now my son is out there standing on the front line. So, continuing the tradition. Continuing in tradition. Yeah, it does. It just, I mean, there needs to be a way to make it more affordable, but I think it doesn't start really at the healthcare. I think it starts at the education, doesn't it? Because, well, why does a doctor need to earn so much money when he finally gets out of all that schooling? It's because all that schooling cost most of his limbs to get through, right? 2 arms, 3 legs, and some other stuff there. So that's a multifaceted issue, I guess. There's a lot of pieces, moving pieces to it. But I think that it is something that we need to take into consideration. But I don't think forcing everybody to have health insurance, certain health insurance, is the way to do it. I think giving people the opportunity to save up somehow for their health care. Because, do we need $6,000 toilets for the government? Or maybe we can just not spend that much and let people keep more of their own money and give them opportunities to save that money in an account for health care or something like that. Special account that's tax-free or tax-reduced, maybe. Just like a IRA or something like that. Medical IRA. I don't know. Whatever you want to call it. That'd be a nice thing to do. And maybe not spend all the money in Social Security that was supposed to be socked away for stuff that it wasn't planned on spending. Put that money back that they took out of those Social Security and Medicare lockboxes, quote unquote, that they were supposed to be in. That'd be a good start right there. I'm using, you can see I'm using the Twilight Blue, the MSP Master Series color on these. I did it in the smaller versions of these that are on some of the tiles, building tiles. And so that's why I'm carrying it over to the bigger versions. And I'm really doing it because to me it seems like it would be something that would be a thing. That they would have this statuary kind of would be nice and prettied up and all that it wouldn't be so bland, even though probably a lot of things are bland in the 40th, I guess 41st millennium is what it would be, right? It's 40K. Although we may be moving on, right? We're supposed to be maybe moving on. Yeah, free health. Nothing's ever free, though. That's the thing. I remember I was talking with some Canadians and on Facebook, some Canadian friends, and talking about it, and I said, you just can't take in taxes or anything else from someone else to give to someone else. You just can't say you have too much, you're too rich, so you need to give some of your money for this. And I'm talking as a poor veteran that lives off my VA money, and that's all I got. I'm not a rich person, and I don't have a lot of money. But even in that, I can see that to do that is just theft. It's just downright theft. And it's not right to take, not right to steal. And they admitted to me, yes, it's not right to steal, and taking money from someone else, just for that purpose is kind of like stealing, but they still couldn't say, oh, well, no, we can't do this. They still were like, well, no, you still need to do it. And it was weird for them to be able to acknowledge in themselves that, it was basically theft and that was wrong, but that they still could do it. And then one of them had the audacity to say, well, what about you? And you get your VA healthcare and stuff. And I said, yeah, my VA healthcare that I signed basically a contract saying that, hey, if I go and sacrifice time and all this with doing what my country wants me to do, that when the time comes, if I'm injured or hurt or later on, that you'll take care of me. I said, that's kind of a contract that was between me and my government. And I'll tell you the truth, they didn't hold up their end. They did not hold up their end. That's something I'll say. And there's brothers who are far worse off than me that they need to really take care of. I'll wait my place in line. That's fine. I got my issues, but I can live through it. But there are some brothers in arms who man, they deserve some better treatment. They don't need to be dying in the parking lots because they're not getting taken care of. It's crazy. But I really think that people themselves, just general everyday people, not just Americans, but people in this world, just everyday people, would probably take better care of each other than the government takes care of people. Because the government becomes this faceless, nameless, disconnected bureaucracy. But people, these are neighbors, these are friends, these are fellow citizens of your city or your town. And we see it time and again when people see people who are in trouble. Someone's house burns down or something like that. People reach out, they take care of them. And if people had more resources to take care of each other because they weren't giving them to this giant bureaucracy of government that really is only supposed to be paving the roads and making sure there's ports and highways and all that for international and interstate commerce and border control, and nothing much more than that. They really are supposed to be taken care of, because the rest is supposed to be for the states. And if we could even bring that further down and keep it more local and give people an opportunity to take care of each other, I have a lot of faith in that people would take care of each other. Sure, there's some of us that wouldn't, because we're buttheads or selfish or sociopaths or something, but I think those people are in the vast minority of minorities. And we've spent way too much time letting other people tell us that we won't take care of each other, that we need somebody else, something else to do that for us. And I don't think we do. I think there are many, many of us who would stop on the highway to help someone change a tire, or get to the closest repair shop, or get a few gallons of gas, or who would gladly chip in money for some cancer treatment, or bigger or little things. I think we are better than we give ourselves credit for. Overall, I think we really are. And there's just been too many people in high places that have been telling us we're not. We should probably stop listening to them. Because, in the immortal words of any 3-year-old, they're duty heads. They really are. Ooh, that's good. I like this. I like how that turns out. A lot of the gray still shows through, but it gives it some interest, some depth. And we'll go over the Aquillas. We'll do the skulls. I've left these ropes. I'm not sure what to do with those. Probably gonna I keep wanting to say Don Star, but Don Stone up this tablet he's holding. Make it look more stony, more tablety. Hit these, hit the lavores, the skulls. What else on this side panel? I'm wondering if I should do anything with the scalloped edges down here, but I'm thinking no. I'm thinking that's going a step too far. Put too much of this paint out. This is going to be the death of me. I'm going to have to find that paint again, and that will be an issue because I got the paint from the store, but the store only had the one 3-piece set, and I'm not sure if that's one I can get separately. I hope it is. Plus, I hate ordering things online. I hate it. I have the patience of a Etch-a-Sketch on a vibrating bed. That's me. Just can't do it. Just got to. I'm the kind of person that will go online and yeah, it just sucks not having your own thing. I was self-employed for a decade. Had a few businesses I ran in town. And it's no fun. You can take care of all your own health insurance and all that stuff. So people don't understand. I guess when you're getting your health insurance from your work and everything, it's not something you think about. But when you're having to go through and purchase it on your own, man, it's you really realize what goes into it. I was fortunate, I tell you. Back then, I'm remarried now, but back then I was married to my first wife, and We had just gotten some of our new insurance stuff straightened out, and we decided that we didn't need the insurance from her work for normal type insurance stuff. So we converted it all to she converted it all to accidental death insurance, just in case something happened. And because the insurance I had for my stuff was enough for all of us. And she ended up just 3 months later, way home from work, she ended up being sideswiped on a motorcycle by a hit-and-run driver, and she was killed. So, but the good that came out of that was that we had that money, and I was able to pay some stuff off. I spent a period of a couple of years, 2 years, I think, at home with my boys. The two boys that I had at that time, two older boys that they're now moved out. Left my job. I told them, I have my boys, and I have to do what I have to do for them. And that's all there is to it. I said, they only have me right now, and I don't have much of a choice. I've got to take care of them. And so I used that money to stay home those 2 years, and when it got kind of low, I started a business. And that worked for a while. That was good. Until my military years caught up with me, and I was unable to continue doing that kind of work. Oh, it's been a while, man. That's good. The sucky thing was when I got remarried a couple years after I'd been married for a while. My second wife, current wife, she decided to look up my birth father. That is something that I had tried to do off and on over the years, and just had never been able to track him down. Well, she has some skills in that kind of stuff, and she was able to track him down, sorta. I found out, and it's just nuts. Got a hold of his wife, my birth father's wife, and he had passed away in a motorcycle accident from a heart attack 2 months before my first wife died. So that sucked much, but I'm much better from that period now than I was. But yeah, that sucked. That sucked because there was a lot of questions that I had, a lot of things that I would like to have been able to say and do, but that opportunity never came. That's really the bad one. I was able to say I love you and say goodbye to my wife. Just literally a few hours. I had stopped by her work before I went home, take the kids out to a Cub Scout meeting, and I'm grateful for that, for sure, that I was able to do that. So she passed away knowing that I loved her, and that was the last thing she heard from me. So if at any point that there is a good thing from that, then that's that. But on the sucky side was not being able to at least attempt to have a relationship with my birth father. That kind of sucked for sure. But we all move on and we do well with what we have. These guys are going to be the death of me. I wonder how many of these tiles I have put into these buildings. I should not count. See, I was talking about it before in the other live stream. This is like, people say, yeah, if you just keep a positive attitude, la-da-da-da-da, and you can do anything. You know what? Because of the nature of my job in the military and the nature of my disability, I know something that a lot of people don't know about themselves. I know a few things that a lot of people don't know about themselves. Yeah. I wasn't when I was younger, for sure, curious about them, but I guess at some point, at least at some point in my life, the point where I want history, a history of where I came from and all that, and a part of that's gone. Part of it I still have. We found the family on that side now. We don't have a lot of interaction with them, but they're there. They're there. At least got some Facebook interaction with them. But as I was saying, I know some stuff that I think a majority of people don't know about themselves, but I know about myself. I know my limits. I know how far I can be pushed before I will break. I know that if I break, that I can keep going and put myself back together. And that I guess that there is a limit to how far I can go. I know that limit. I know where it is. I know where to expect it. I know that it can be broken through, and that if I do break through it, that there are consequences, but that I can put myself together, or at least that I have put myself together at least once before. I think some people they don't know those limits. Some people they deal with that by constantly pushing limits, and other people, I think, deal with it by always backing away from things. I'm not sure if either way is good or bad. It's a personal choice. I think that each person has to make for themselves, really. Now for these guys, these are gonna be a thing, aren't they? Yeah. So that's cool. Are you adopted, or did you go up in the foster system? That would be a thing. I don't know. I was a military brat, so I spent a lot of time in different places. Pretty much everything from my childhood is still in the same large tote in my closet. Because my parents in the Army, you got weight limits back then. I don't know, probably the same thing now, for each room. And my parents had a lot of heavy marble furniture and things like oak hutches that they had purchased in Germany. And so that exceeded the weight limit for the living room. And so guess where that extra weight came from? My brother and my bedroom. So yeah, we didn't get to keep a lot of stuff in between moves and all that, so not a whole lot of stuff. Mine's all fit in a box. And so yeah, constantly being uprooted, constantly new friends, new places, everything new all the time. I guess maybe that's where my sense of, as I grew up, came from, wanting to maybe understand roots, understand where maybe roots would have been or could have been. I guess maybe that's a big part of it for me. Adopted. You're adopted. So that's great. Hopefully that was great. Hopefully. I'm pretty sure you have a good family. If you're not really wondering anything about your birth parents, you probably did have a good adopted family. Which is a good thing. More people should take the opportunity to adopt. So a lot of kids need good homes. We tried adopting a young girl. Her mother was a drug addict, and her father was in prison for drugs. He was a friend of a friend's family member, and the mother decided she wanted to keep the kids, and so all that fell through, and she decided she wanted to raise them, and now they are currently in the foster system, and there's not much we can do about it. But we tried. So, we tried. So, and they're in Florida, so there's not much we can do at this point now. But we still are in contact with some of the family, so maybe something will come by one day. Something will change with that situation. If not us and our family, maybe another family. All things work to good in His will. Sometimes you just don't understand it, but they do work out that way. Well, that is that. So, what time? I've been doing this for almost 2 hours. So I'm going to start saying my goodbyes, cleaning my brushes. Because like I said, I do have to, what time is it? Yeah, I do have to get up in 2 hours and start my day. Which is, not a big deal for me. The longest I've had to stay awake was once in the Navy. We did like a Tiger cruise, and that's when you're coming back from a 6 month. For us, it was an 8-month cruise. When you get close enough to the States, they'll helicopter out some of the family civilians, the male civilians, and then they'll let some of the guys off the ship so that they can use their bunks, and they get to go home early. And we had done that. They had done that, and they messed up. The guy in charge of the plant I worked on, he made a mistake. He sent everybody who was qualified a certain watch station except me off on the Tiger cruise, and it wasn't caught. So for 4 days, since both engine rooms were up, it was an engine room supervisory position. What they had to do is the front engine room was, the engine was up, the reactor was up, and all that. And they shut down the reactor in the aft engine room. So I actually had to do the work in the front engine room, and then I just had to go back to the back engine room and just stand watching a certain area. There was nothing to really worry about for that. And I did that for 4 days. 12 hours in the front engine room, 12 hours in the back engine room. Back and forth for 4 days. No sleep. Because I was the only one qualified to watch, and the ship couldn't go anywhere unless someone was standing that watch. Yeah. That was bad. I can tell you for certain that after day 3, you start to see things that aren't not there. Yeah. Alright, you have a good sleep too. I appreciate you being on the thing, and anybody else here is watching. And I will get better at these. You guys can help me get better. Just put down in the comments when this goes onto the thing some changes or anything that I can do, or something you might want to see me do on the live stream. For right now, it'll be mostly painting or kit bashing something. And I am working towards this to bring the battle reports back. So those will come back, guys. All right, everybody. Have a good night or morning, depending on where you are. I appreciate you watching, taking your time to be with me. I know your time is so important, because time is really important. You guys have a great day. Sorry for rambling on about crazy stuff, but hey, what else am I going to talk about here? Alrighty, guys. I love you, and I will talk to you later.